Hello and welcome to another episode of the Warm Blanket podcast, where we embark on a journey to see what makes us feel good about Star Trek, where is our love comes from, and what it means for us. In short, what is our warm blanket? My name is Gary, I'm your host, and I'm very honored to welcome here my very special guest today, the actress who played in multiple TV series like Becker, 4400, Murder She Wrote, just to mention a few. For many of us, she will be remembered for playing a certain royalty in a small movie called Star Trek First Contact that she won a Saturn Award for. She is a well-established stage actor, producer, and an avid gardener who I'm very fortunate to sit down today and talk to. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a very warm welcome to the one and only Alice Krige. How are you today?
Hi, Gary. Thank you for a lovely introduction. I'm doing very well, and I'm very happy to be joining you.
Well, the honor and the pleasure is certainly mine. And before we go into the let's say air quote the serious talk, I wonder, what do you enjoy most about gardening?
Oh my goodness. It's profoundly therapeutic to just put my hands in the earth, and I love that when I am in our garden, which is in very wild countryside, and it's a fairly wild garden. It's not manicured or tamed. That I feel immensely connected to, well, I will just say it, the web of creation, because we have all sorts of little wild animals who come in and out of our garden. We have a section of the garden that's really wild. We've let it go to a meadow in the last month, so it's full of clover and nipplewort and all sorts of little wild flowers, and that's where the hedgehog lives and the slow worm. And we have cows and sheep on the other side of the hedge, and I just feel very strongly that I am a small part of creation, and there's all this incredibly vital life sort of blooming around me. And I suppose what I love about it most is it gives me a sense of being connected or part of a really miraculous whole.
No, it is certainly it is certainly a good aspect of it, and I experienced it myself working in this small garden that we have in the backyard, and it's really, as you mentioned, it's therapeutic as I can agree with that strongly.
Uh,
Um,
can I just say one more thing?
sure.
If you are a gardener, there is a wonderful series of books written by a woman called Dorothy McLean, not about gardening per se, but she was a woman who, through a long journey, sort of spiritual journey, came to be able to communicate with the Davic force or blueprint behind each plant and trees. It's like the creative blueprint. Everything has a highly specific blueprint, like a thumbprint. Anyway, she's written this series of books. One of them is called The Call of the Trees, and the other one is To Hear the Angels Sing. I don't know if you've ever heard of Findhorn up in Scotland. You might have.
Oh, not yet.
Findhorn Bay. Look it up on the internet. Anyway, she communicates with the Devas or the fairies, and I really do suggest you get the books. You can get them as Kindle online, because they're like, they open a window to a secret, invisible life of the garden. It really kind of is very enriching for the gardener's experience of his or her, the plants in their garden.
I will make sure to check that out. Just to start a conversation from the very beginning, may I ask, have you always wanted to be an actor?
No, No, I wanted to be a ballet dancer.
Oh, really?
Um, and that's what I trained to do initially. Well, from the age of 8, I became very absorbed by ballet dancing.
Hmm.
But by the time I was 16, my father said quite rightly that he didn't think it was a career that had any long lasting life. And I went to university to become what my mother was, which was enormously interesting to me too, a psychologist. But I had one free credit and I did a year of drama, and that was it. Um, I I gradually kind of changed course and wound up as an actor.
Wow. And I seem to get to know that you have been part, or I'm not sure if you're still part of the prestigious Royal Shakespeare Company in England.
Yes, I did a season at the at Stratford, and then actually at that time, because that was a long time ago, that was in the early 80s.
Hmm.
At that time, they took the productions from Stratford up to Newcastle, and then from Newcastle down to London. So I did that. I did that 2.5 year
Wow.
um, cycle of performing at the
Mhm.
RSC.
It kind of makes me wonder about two things. One, if you have ever had the chance to play with Sir Patrick Stewart, and why on earth you have not been casted in Doctor Who before?
Um, well, obviously, I worked with Patrick on First Contact, but that was the first time I met him.
Hmm.
Um, and I've done Doctor Who on the radio.
Oh,
Um,
really?
I've been in some Doctor Who radio episodes. There's a company called The Big Finish
Oh, yes.
that does Doctor Who, or has done in the past, and I've done a couple of their of their shows, but I've never done it on television. No, I haven't been asked, uh, so it's never happened.
Well, who knows after this? If Christian Bull is listening to this, please hire Miss Krieg. We want to see her on Doctor Who too.
That would be great.
Do you like the show? Have you watched Doctor Who before?
I Not a great deal of it, but I have, and I do. Yes, I don't watch much television. I actually garden
Hmm.
or walk with my husband and our dog. I don't know why. I don't watch a great deal of television.
That's probably for the
I grew
better
up
of it.
without it. I grew up without it, and I think I've never got the habit of doing it.
Hmm.
And
No.
I'm working, so I do a lot of sort of research when I'm about to do a role. So I kind of um, haven't had that much time. Don't have that much
Hmm.
time. My husband is very, very good. He writes and directs,
Hmm.
and he watches everything as research, really. And so
Hmm.
every now and then he yanks me in to watch something.
Hmm. So I wonder, from many interviews, you stated a few times that before you got the role in Star Trek, you haven't really watched Star Trek, or you didn't really know about the franchise itself. But now that I think I can safely say that the role and the franchise kind of became a part of your life. How do you think about the franchise in retrospective?
I am immensely grateful to be part of the universe. One, because the role was really a fabulous role to play, and I was very lucky. I had 3 goes at it, because then there was Voyager, and then there was the installation at Vegas.
Hmm.
Um, and not only did I get to work with all the people that I'd become very fond of twice more, um, but I got to go on exploring the character, and that was something that really, really, really impressed me
Hmm.
about Patrick and all of them, really, everyone in Next Gen, because they didn't ever kind of sit back and think, oh, we've got this character nailed. They
Hmm.
all went on looking to expand the character's complexity. I mean, Brent was really, really looking to push out the boundaries of who Data was.
Hmm.
They'd been doing it for years, and they hadn't got bored, they hadn't got tired of it, they weren't jaded. I was very impressed and touched by that as an actor.
Hmm.
So they were wonderful to work with, really. Um, and I know that I've said this many times. I say it at conventions because I really do mean it. Um, to go to conventions is very special for me. One, because for many reasons, but one of them is that the community.
Hmm.
I go from job to job, and sometimes I don't see people that I really loved working with ever again.
Hmm.
But there is a sense, a very real sense of community in the Star Trek family. Um, and it's really lovely to be able to keep revisiting that. Um, to meet fans, the same fans I've met before, I meet again. And actually to see all the actors again is because so often you just don't cross paths with people again, ever.
Hmm.
Um, and you're always on the move. So it's lovely to have this sort of through line of the Star Trek family, both the
Hmm.
fans and the actors.
It is wonderful to hear, and being a fan myself, I can totally say the same thing about the fan community as well. Like being amongst these people who love the show for the same reason as I do, it's just fantastic, and conventions are the same for us as well. Going in there and really just connect on that one day, and apart from being constantly online and chatting and chattering about everything and anything Star Trek. Um, well,
And there's another thing that I love about them.
mhm.
I love when people come in costume because as my job as an actor is essentially, it's very, very serious when I'm working, but there's also an element of play to it and an element of make believe and briefly exploring other realities. And I
Mhm.
think most people, when they leave school or uni and they get a job, just the weight of being a grown up and having to have a house, and if you've got a partner or you're married and you've got kids, that's a huge responsibility. And then within a relationship there's enormous responsibility. And I think that what folks do who come to the conventions, that they can be playful and dress up. We 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 stop doing that. Most people stop doing that. And I think it's so important. I think it's really important. Um, and so I love it. I love to go and see people sort of extending their imagination and their creativity.
So I suppose you have met a fair amount of people who dressed up as your character from First Contact or Voyager.
Yes, and their ingenuity and creativity in making the costumes, the Borg costumes, just blows my mind. There's no way I could do that. Um, just wonderful.
So I came to wonder, and I'm sure you have got asked this question quite a few times, but how did you get the role for the Borg Queen for
Well,
First Contact?
my agent submitted me, as they do
Hmm.
for roles. They get a breakdown of what's casting, and they look at it and they think, right, well, Alice might be good for this, and they send in your photograph and your resume, or your show reel. Um, it's of course it's changed now. Now you very very rarely meet a director. It's you put yourself on tape and you send the tape, and if they're interested, they will either offer it or they will ask to speak to you, usually where they can see you, Skype or FaceTime or WhatsApp, and or now I guess it will be Zoom, um, and then you have a meeting. But when I auditioned for the Ball Queen, I actually went and met them, um, and I knew nothing about Trek at all. My husband had a friend that I was in LA at that point, who had co-written with his wife some of the Borg episodes. And so I went and borrowed some of the Borg tapes from him and watched them and went in, and she's actually a very small role. She's in about three scenes, and then one tiny one where she doesn't really speak much. Anyway, I learned the scenes. I went in and I did it. I had said to my agent, I need to see the script. I can't put it in just for three scenes. And she said, no, you don't begin to understand. No one sees the script. This is it. You either do these three scenes or you can forget it. So I did the three scenes. And as I was actually doing them, performing them for Jonathan and the casting director and the producers, I suddenly realized how fascinating she was and just how interesting she was. And I thought I'd completely blown it. So when I left the audition, we didn't have cell phones. So I ran to my car on the Paramount parking lot, and I drove out in search of a payphone. And the first phone I found, I called my agents and I said, I really blew that.
Oh.
Please phone them and ask them if I can do it again. I would really love the role, and I know I can do better. Anyway, she phoned them and told them, and we heard nothing for 3 weeks. And then I thought, oh well, another one bites the dust. And then we got a call from them, and they said, we want you to come in and do it again, please. And I did, and they offered it to my agent as I was walking to my car in the car park. So, who knows what happened or how that process went down. I don't know
Oh, wow.
what made them change their minds, or at any rate, what made them decide. Maybe they were talking to other people. I don't know. But that's the story.
It was faith. You had to play that role. Was it hard getting into the costume and finding the character? I mean, you mentioned that by at the time when you've been doing the rehearsals and the auditions, you kind of thought that she's a fascinating character. But I just wonder if it was a bit of a more it was a journey on its own to find the character behind the lines.
Every role has a process that's kind of at any rate with me, that's kind of specific to that role. And so no one, they'd all gone off. The whole cast and crew and Jonathan, they'd all gone off to the Angeles forest to shoot those sequences, in the forest where the ones I mean, up those forest sequences. They'd gone off to shoot that. So the only person in LA was Brent. And so we spent some time together on the lot, just talking, and he was very helpful to me. He had his very own particular take, and it was really helpful to me. But no one else really had an idea of exactly who the Borg were or where they'd come from. There wasn't, like, that I knew of, a mythology or a history of who they were. So I thought, well, I better figure this out myself. And so I did things like reading A Brief History of Time again, and just started to try and figure out for myself who she was. And then we started the costume process and the makeup process. And both things were enormously helpful to me in terms of the character just showing up. Sometimes it's got nothing to do with the costume. Costume is always a definitive moment because it's like the very first concrete choice you make. Until then, your mind is going round and round, and you may be dreaming, and just an intuitive thing kicks in. But the first choice you make is what she wears. I didn't have too much choice because they had a very clear idea of what they wanted, but it was extremely helpful. The actual process of assembling the suit, because each of the arms and the legs and the torso were all sort of molded onto webbing, and to begin with, it was too small for me.
Oh.
And they had to make me a new one after the first day. What it wasn't too small. What happened was it shrank.
Oh.
The rubber shrank, and it was way too tight. It was impossible. They knew that I couldn't do it because my hands and feet swelled up because it just couldn't get a blood supply. But the run up to that first day, and the first day really kind of developed the character's walk, and it was the costume that did it. But also the face that Scott Wheeler designed was absolutely crucial. I mean, if you think about it, you can't really imagine the Ball Queen apart from what she looked like, can you?
Not really.
No. I mean, other characters you could think, well, maybe she could have had red hair, but no. That was it. It was like the character just showed up. It was like I was just a channel. It doesn't happen very often, but it's crazy when it does, and it's kind of exciting because she does herself. You just show up, and then she shows up, and you kind of watch the whole thing happen. It's very peculiar, but it's rather wonderful.
Did ever occur into your mind once you stepped into the the makeup chair and you kind of left as you went there as Alice Krige and you left from the makeup chair as the Borg Queen and you looked in the mirror? I wonder what was your first impression? Have you got any impression of like, hey, this is who am I at the moment?
Well, it was very interesting because there was a day just before we started shooting when they put it all together, because the makeup took a very long time initially. It got faster by the time we were doing Voyager, and then even faster by the time we were in Vegas or shooting for Vegas. We didn't go to Vegas. We shot on the Paramount lot. As I remember. No, we didn't. We shot somewhere in the valley, in the San Fernando Valley. I think we shot on some stage somewhere. Anyway, it took a long time. The makeup took about 7 hours, 6 or 7 hours to put on, and so it was very interesting because layer by layer she emerged. Anyway, the day came when we put the suit on and the face on and the head, all the tubes and everything on to show the producers. And when they did my makeup and suit, I had a little caravan, just me, in a corner of that area of the lot where we were, because I would start at 3 a.m. And so it was just me and Scott Wheeler. But when they showed the producers and Jonathan the whole look, they took me into the big trailer where Patrick and Brent and everyone was, and there were like mirrors on four sides. It was all mirrors. And we called them and said we're ready, and they were on their way down from the offices upstairs or up on the stage. And while we waited for them to walk over, they put in the lenses. And I was standing facing the mirror, the makeup mirror, and everyone was standing behind me. And I kind of blinked, I suppose, and I looked up into the mirror. And everyone behind me went, and I thought, yes, this is it. They're scared of her. They created her, and they're scared of her. It was a wild feeling. It was lovely, actually. She was a very weird sandpit to play the ball queen. You know, you get to explore a psyche like that, totally amoral, totally without empathy, but you don't suffer the consequences from being that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I know.
so it's a weird, interesting process, because you get to be someone you would never ever dream of being in your real life, but you get to live it. It's
Wow.
it's crazy.
It must be, and the sheer fact of it that she's considered as a villain in the Star Trek universe, and you know that's one thing I wanted to ask. That do you think that she's really a villain, or she's just a?
No, no, she's not a villain. She's doing her she's doing everyone a favor. She's not a villain. They've just got the wrong end of the stick. I guess she is a villain, exactly because she has no empathy. I suppose people would call her a sociopath. I think that's too human a label to put on her, because she isn't really. She's not human. She's a force in creation that assumes a human form. Doesn't make her any nicer or any better to know that she's not human. She's not. She is on a certain level pure energy.
Have you ever?
She's a kind of energy that obviously exists in the universe, and she just for the purposes of the story, she assumes a form that people can connect to.
Yeah, no,
Well, that's my
I
story at any rate. That's what
I think it's definitely a nicer way to put it, because I certainly think that she's not as a quote unquote villain. I mean, no villain in Star Trek really a villain. I mean, we can go back in history and talk about this, but you know, I don't want to bore anyone. It's a different episode for a different day anyway. But I'm thinking actually, and there's one more question, and that I would like to dive into some other things as well. Have you ever thought that the character will become such an iconic, recognizable person, a character that you know that will essentially be a big part of your life in a sense?
I have no idea at all, and I don't know if they did either. I don't think they anticipated that what she would ultimately be was a sort of archetype. And I think when you strike a note that is an archetype, people make her specific to themselves. They experience her in a highly personal way. I've been to many conventions now, and almost everyone has a highly personal interpretation of who she is, and what she is. So it's interesting. They created a character that resonates inside people's heads, to do with their fears, to do with a whole number of different things, all contained within her, but they link. What she is links in a highly personal way to everyone who experiences her, and I haven't seen that happen very often. I have no idea if they anticipated that the character would become, as you say, iconic, a sort of archetype.
It is.
Like
Yeah.
Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, or the angel Lucifer, is an archetype. Lucifer is an archetype, and in a way, she's a bit like Lucifer, a fallen angel in a way.
That's a very interesting. That's a very interesting way to put it, for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So I have read a few interviews with you back a few years ago, and you said that you don't really watch episodes of yourself from Voyager or even from First Contact. I wonder if that changed in ever since, and if you do the same thing with movies or episodes that you've been played in, and what is the reason behind, if I can ask this question?
I find it extremely painful to watch myself. I just all I can see is what I failed to accomplish. It's
Hmm.
it's uh, it's uh, it's very difficult. I don't enjoy it at all. Um, I kind of now have to watch everything because one needs to have what they call a show reel, just
Hmm.
with you pull excerpts from stuff you've done, not necessarily everything. They really can't be much longer than 5 minutes, but that's what you send out when you're looking for a job. And then there's also another sort of site that agents and casting directors and production people use. So it's like a cloud site, and you put clips of
Hmm.
your work that shows a range and a variety. You put it up on that website, or they'll put it up there. And so I
Hmm.
kind of have to watch stuff to pull bits out. But it's extremely rare that I would watch anything more than once, and I watch it for that reason,
Hmm.
not because I enjoy watching myself.
Wow. I did not know that, that could be a. I mean, I imagine being in the business, you it's like basically doing your job. You don't necessarily want to watch yourself doing your job, in a sense. Like I'm a telephone operator, I don't want to watch myself back 8 hours a
Yes,
day.
yes, 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 yes.
All right. So we arrived to a place in our little episode where we have a short segment called "Only You Know," and it's 5 quick questions that I
Okay.
prepared for you. Do you have a secret talent?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I don't know. Um, um, a secret talent. I don't know. For example, well, I mean, if I've got a talent at all, it's that I find people endlessly interesting. I suppose a talent, if you want to call it that, is that I am immensely interested in people and animals too, actually.
Do you have any dream co-star that you would like to play with?
A dream co-star.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, there are so many. Um, I, I, I mean, the list would go on and on. I think there are so many wonderful actors. Um, so many. It's a shame to name one because it excludes the others. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
And I don't want to do that.
That's fine. I respect that.
Yeah.
If you if you weren't an actor, what would you be?
Um, if I could go back and start again, you
Yeah,
mean?
let's go that way. Mm-hmm.
I would. I would. I would probably be what my father was and my brothers are, which are doctors, but I would not do it the same way. I would um, I would extend my scope. Obviously, I would get a regular medical degree,
Mm-hmm.
but I would extend it to what they now call integrative medicine. So
Mm-hmm.
that includes in how you approach what's troubling someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, both you extend the paradigm to homeopathy and naturopathy and Ayurveda. I would not, my brothers are brilliant. One is a very brilliant surgeon, and the other one is a beloved physician. And my father was a general practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
and they've done so much good, and they've helped so many people. Um, but I think the world has reached a point now where we need to take a really holistic approach. And if I could do it again, I would wish to be of more service than I think I have been.
When was the last time when you were starstruck?
Um, I've been starstruck
Mm-hmm.
often. Gosh, I can't think exactly when, but you know, for example, I while I was in the theatre in London in January and February,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to see once it was over, or what? No, it was while we were still. I went to a matinee. Oh, I went on a day that we were dark on a Monday, so I went and saw a Monday performance of Tony Sher and a wonderful South African actor called John Carney.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've worked with both of them before. I worked with Tony at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I produced a film called Jail Caesar that John Carney worked in. And so I know them both well. And I went to see it, and I was so incredibly moved by John's performance because he had written the play as
Mm-hmm.
well as taking there were only two of them, two leads.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I knew him well, um, I waited at the stage door because I took the actress I was working with um, in the play persona that we were doing, because she's South African as well,
Mm-hmm.
and she's Xhosa, and obviously John Carney is Xhosa,
Mm-hmm.
and so she was incredibly um, excited to meet him. She's never met him. He's an icon in South Africa, and I stood there at the stage door, and when he came out, I felt totally stage struck. I know him, I've worked with him,
Mm-hmm.
but he has such presence, and he did such a moving performance that I was kind of speechless and totally stage struck. That's
Wow.
the last time, or the most recent time, and that
Mm-hmm.
was in February.
Wow. So if you could trade places, who would you trade places for with a day? For a day.
Wow. If I could trade places, I can't imagine what it must be like to be Greta Thunberg, if I've said that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But I am so moved by how she has galvanized people's imaginations, particularly the imagination of her generation,
Mm-hmm.
because my heart bleeds for those generations. I think you all have such a big job to do. Um, it's, you know, it's amazing to me that so many human beings can just kind of go on as if we weren't at the most critical moments imaginable. And she uh, is quite remarkable.
She is indeed.
Yeah.
So, I do have to ask, you worked in many TV shows and movies ever since you've been an actor, and you have quite a few movie upcoming as well, some of them in production and some of them in um, still in an earlier stage of production. Um, which movie, from apart from Star Trek, if we differentiate the Star Trek at the moment, put it aside for a moment, which productions and which characters are the most closest to you?
You know, I learn something from everything I do somehow. I discover something. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't, then I'm not doing what I'm meant to be doing. And so I, I gain something um, every time I work. And so, again, like saying, what actors would I like to co star with or work with?
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult to exclude one from the other because each one has meant something very special and specific to me. Even if it wasn't a particularly good script or a particularly challenging role, they've all had a reason for being
Mm-hmm.
there, um, which is an enormous privilege, actually, to go to work um, and have such a complete connection to
Mm-hmm.
what it is you're doing. Um, and so it's there have been wonderful pieces of work that I've been in, and I've learned. I mean, there's a movie that I made a long time ago called The Institute Benjamenta. It's a black and white movie. It was made by a pair of identical twins. They are famous for being stop motion animationists. The brothers Quay,
Mm-hmm.
Quay. Their work is extraordinary, and this was the first live action feature they ever did. It was a remarkable piece of work. Um, I finished in Christmas. Actually, I was up in Glasgow, and then we went up into the Cairngorms, and we actually did spend a day working in Edinburgh, or a couple of days
Mm-hmm.
working in Edinburgh. A small independent feature called She Will,
Mm-hmm.
which is also it's totally across genres. You can't really pigeonhole it,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a wonderful experience. But then I did one scene in a film in Greece 2 summers ago. They've just finished it, um, and I wanted to do it because I was so moved by the story.
Mm-hmm.
With just one scene, I went to Athens. Um, I was there for less than a week, and I did this one scene. Um, it's called Echoes from the Past. It's a true story.
Mm-hmm.
So, in She Will, the one that we shot before Christmas in Glasgow and up in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
I was the principal role. I was the she in She Will. And in Echoes from the Past, I had one scene.
Mm-hmm.
So, but both were really enriching, and also I learned about my craft in
Mm-hmm.
both of them. One was one scene, and one was a really huge role. But I learned something about what I do from both of them.
Mm-hmm. So you have a new movie coming up. I mean, if I can trust IMDb, you have a movie coming up shortly or soonish called Shintetsu. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly.
No,
And
no, Shingetsu is actually a film that I co-wrote and co-produced and acted in a, a long time ago,
oh,
um, and we didn't release it for multiple reasons,
hmm
um, but we are contemplating actually putting it on the net,
hmm
just putting it out there, for, not necessarily for people to buy, but just for people to see,
hmm
because it's quite intense subject matter.
oh,
Um,
I wonder if you can tell us a bit about more. I did see as I mentioned, I seen it in IMDb listed, and I seen you as a lead as well. Just wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about the project, the movie.
it's based on actual events,
hmm
but it is it just happens between a man and a woman, and it
hmm
starts at daybreak and
hmm
it ends when the moon sets the
Oh
next
wow.
then so it goes, it's 24 hours really. um and it's these two people are thrown together by accident, by accident, by chance, in
hmm
an accident, and they wind up having to spend the day together. They don't want to be together in proximity to each other.
hmm
um but as the day progresses, they both discover that they were in the Balkans at the time of all the troubles,
hmm
the ethnic cleansing and all of that happened.
hmm
She was a Doctors Without Borders doctor, and
hmm
he was part of an elite group that were working undercover.
hmm
Um, and both of their lives are completely destroyed. Although she wasn't in combat, he was, but their lives are completely destroyed by what they experienced. And
hmm
this is now years later, and they've never spoken about it, either of them, to anyone. You learn what happened to them just
hmm
as they slowly start to realize they were there at the same time,
hmm
um,
Wow.
experiencing the conflict from different perspectives. And very, very slowly, they begin to talk about it,
hmm
almost reluctantly. But by the time the moon sets the next morning, you get a sense, not that they've fallen in love with each other, but that they have enabled each other to sort of return to life.
hmm Oh, sounds like a really interesting story. And not to mention the time frame of the movie itself is very, very specific too.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. I wonder, playing in multiple movies and TV shows, is there anything? Is there a dream role that you would love to play, no matter what? I know you mentioned that no role is basically different from each other because every one of them has a certain value that you learn from. But is there something that you would love to play at least once?
I would be really, really terrified, but it would be very interesting to return to Shakespeare. I'm not sure I would have the courage to do it because, from this perspective, I know just how incredibly difficult it is to get it right.
hmm
Um, but it would be the challenge of a lifetime.
hmm I'm sure you would be fantastic in it.
No, I have no confidence about that at all.
Well, if that matters, I'm sure that myself and I think I can safely speak out on the behalf of my audience. We would love to see you in a Shakespeare play at the one point, and we would love you no matter what.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know it was a bit cheesy, but I had to.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
So a little bit going back to Star Trek as well, and I think that's probably where our little little podcast will end. Um, when you think about Star Trek, if someone you're gardening outside in your garden, and someone from the very far shouts Star Trek, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
I think, do I look like the Borg Queen? I'm always amazed that people recognize me, without the makeup, without the whole thing. What is it that would make anyone think, oh my goodness, it's the Borg Queen? I don't know. It mystifies me, but people do.
Mm-hmm. So as you probably as we discussed at the beginning, and when I kindly invited you over to the show, the title of the podcast is Warm Blanket, which basically for me it summons all Star Trek. It's something that I believe that Star Trek comforts me like as a warm blanket. That's the feeling I get every time when I either watch an episode or a movie or just think about it. Wonder what is your warm blanket when it comes to Star Trek?
The actors and Jonathan that I worked with. I mean, not a character, the warm blanket aspect of Star Trek as opposed to the people who made it, for me, is that Roddenberry was visualizing a world or a universe where there were really, really wonderful values. It was not about money. It was not about race. It was about humanity trying to be its best. And that's the warm blanket bit of it for me.
And that's a very, very sweet way to sum it up as well. And well, thank you very much for this wonderful chat. I really enjoyed it, and I'm just honored. Honestly, I'm just really honored that I was able to sit down with you, and talk about Star Trek and your life, and even gardening, which we both kind of have an affection for, which is really, really fantastic. Thank you very much for being a part of the show.
My great, great pleasure, and I wish you luck and joy with the possibility of gardening, professionally. It's
yes.
I can think of I think it's hard work, but what a creative and life affirming way to spend your life.
Indeed.
Really, really wonderful.
Indeed. Well, again, thank you very much for your precious time, and thank you very much for all the while listeners to tuning into yet another episode of the Warm Blanket podcast. And until next time, live long and prosper.
Bye, and also thank you to your listeners. I'm so appreciative of everyone that's joined us.
And that was it for this episode. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and rest assured, new episodes will be coming out every week where we sit down with a Trekkie to find out what makes us feel good about Star Trek and to discover what is our warm blanket made of. If you really enjoy listening to this podcast, please leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. It would really mean a lot to me. To find out more about this audio adventure, please visit TREKKERPRISE.com/podcast, where you can also listen to the previous episodes. Thank you again for listening to yet another episode of the Warm Blanket podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode. Live long and prosper.